Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work. Welcome to KIMEcast, Tony Russ. So I was in a great conversation earlier today where I was working with a client, someone we've known for quite a long time, and we just had a great conversation about really like management of their health in their life. And this is an individual who's like 30 to 35 years old, like 33 years old or so probably. And has done a lot of great things in his life. He was able to walk down and play football at USC, went through some big injuries. Like we rehabbed him one time for a PCL tear that we rehabbed without having to have surgery. We've gone through a number of other things. And I've done on and off training with him forever. So he's so intuitive about his mind and his body. It was just a good conversation that I thought we should share, because I think so many people probably struggle with this idea of balancing their life with their health. And it's just this huge, can be a huge riff, you know? So this individual is like he's very kind of type A control, like wants to control all the variables. So he's done everything in my time with him. He's done blood paneling and had a high level nutrition coach. I've always been his movement coach and done all the movement programming, and we've set goals, whether it be like a golfing goal or a football goal or a triathlon goal. I really pursued the Ironman triathlon for really intensely for 3 or 4 years and had some great success with that process. And then now is moving more into like this phase of life where he's running a business with his dad, and so running this pretty high demand, high service oriented business. And by doing so, I can see him getting pulled in these different directions. Like now I have other clients who are depending on me, so I can't do everything for myself that I've always done, which is take care of every little detail in my life and have it perfectly. And we see this with this generation is big, right? Maybe it's not just, maybe it's all generations where it's all about you for a while, and then you start working, and then you realize that it's about the other people. You know, whether you're in a leadership role or you're in a service-based industry or you're in any other industry where you're having to create something for a consumer, and that starts to really take over a lot of your time and effort. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting. So we talked a lot about our big 4 pillars in this process, and I think this is where it really comes down to. You know, if you look at managing stress as one of the variables, we look at movement as one of the variables, we look at nutrition as a variable, and then look at sleep as a variable. And the management of stress is kind of like a recovery category. So I think this is a really big deal. And for him specifically, we spent a lot of the conversation about this. So we know we got the movement box pretty much checked. Sleep box is doing fine, and he's really dialed on what good nutrition is. And we could talk about how difficult that is for anyone, but especially in this country, to eat well and the focus that takes. We've had some great conversations about that lately with people, but on this stress box, to me, it's I've been fortunate in my life to have a few experiences that helped me understand how stress affected me and my body, which led to some changes in the way that I approach the world, or that I approach work, or that I approach anything that I'm doing. So it was kind of unique. But with this gentleman, as working with him, he's very, like I said, controlling. Like, I want to do all these things and do it all perfectly. And I've seen a few times, like even in the triathlon training, go really well, but when they came time to execute the event, he doesn't have complete control, because now you're competing against other people, you're competing against travel and these other variables that aren't always there. And though he planned and programmed for those things really tended to not go well on the day of the event, almost because there was so much build up to it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I found that really interesting. So I talked to him about that. I said, well, now that you're in a job environment, I can see the same thing happening to you, where you have quite a bit of stress and pressure to do well at the job, and you're not used to it. It's new to you to execute at this level and to develop these relationships with these customers and do these things, which is really demanding. And I can see that that's challenging for you when you try to write that against, but I have to eat a certain way, Tone, but I have to sleep exactly this much, but I have to work out exactly this many hours a day, or I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. Where it's like, well, it's not exactly like that. Like, you can have some error. And so we talked a lot about this planning cycle. So a couple of things. But let me first go into this idea of stress. So I'll share my story, which I thought was I shared with him today and seemed to help him. So hopefully that can help some others. But I found out when I was a little guy, just like in grade school, like 4th, 5th grade, I'd get terrible headaches. Like terrible, like migraine level headaches, right? No one could figure out what was wrong with me. We started the process. So no one could figure out why I had these headaches. So I went to a private Catholic school, which is great. I loved that I had nothing. I had nothing. Anything was wrong with the school. I loved it was very competitive academically, and never had any trouble socially. I wouldn't have occurred that there was anything wrong with it. It was great. It was fairly formal, but it wasn't crazy. We weren't walking around like nuns or anything like that. We just had focused education, teachers. But I was very competitive at the school to try to do well in the class. And of course, be the best. It was kind of like my thing. But I couldn't beat certain people academically. So I don't know. I didn't really think it had that much effect on me. But then we moved as a family. We moved about an hour away from there. So I went to a public school, which was like such a walk in the park. It was unbelievable to go through this transition. It was amazing looking back on it. And I would have never put the two together, but I never had a headache again after that time.
Oh, wow.
So there was some level of pressure or performance stress, anxiety, something I was putting on myself or my teachers were putting on me or whatever it was to perform at a certain level academically. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do it. I welcomed it. I wasn't like afraid of it. But looking back, and I'm talking about looking back when I was like a 6th, 7th grader, not like looking back now. Like when I was right in the moment, I was like, wow, this is a big change for me. Mm-hmm. My body is different with the different demands. So that was really interesting. I pursued this, I just kind of stayed on that path. I mean, I was a 7th grader. What the hell did I know? But I knew that was really interesting. So I started to understand like how to regulate your body and to breathe and to like be aware of that the environment has an effect on you, So then I made it through high school, no big deal. That was easy. And then going into college, I noticed that like at the time of like finals, like every time there was finals, but in the first year and a half, like the first 3 final periods I went through, I'd say, like I would get like, I noticed a lot of people around me would get sick, right? A lot of students would get sick during finals and their body just fails. And looking at what I know now, I know exactly why that happens. But for me, I didn't get sick, but I would get like what felt like an ulcer, like stomach pain. Like I'd be like really painful for like 2 or 3 days. And I find myself getting worked up once again, like in this stressful environment where I had to like perform academically. And in my mind, it was a bit out of my control because I didn't know it was not going to be on the test. And I wanted to perform high and do these things. And so I found that. And I remember at that time, again, in the moment, I'm like, shit.
Here it is again.
Just in a different lens. Before it was a headache, and now it was like this deep internal pain. And like, I was like, all right, change my mindset, lay down, breathe, like what's the worst that could happen, kind of a thought process. Like if I don't do well, what's the worst that could happen?
Right. Yeah. A little doomsday scenario. If everything goes wrong, what then?
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
So what? I get an 89 instead of a 91? Like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that kind of a thing. But that's a big deal in college when you're trying to get into grad school and you have these future plans and, like, your grades, like, really depict like, your ability to get into things. So there's a lot of pressure. So I found myself in that situation. But then mentally, I was like, I felt this before in a different format, but I felt my body do this before. And I was able to then at that time, like, regulate it and be like, oh, I need to find this homeostasis. I need to kind of like find some solid common ground. Like I just need to kind of go back to change my mindset basically, right? Yeah. And in doing that, like instantly, like pain changed, problem goes away, never had it again. Yeah. Now I've been in stressful situations since then. And I think that those things taught me like I have to regulate my own body and I'm in complete control of how my body reacts. And it's amazing how much you can get yourself worked up is what I basically have learned. So people that know me now say that like, here's this really boring guy.
Overly relaxed.
Tony's super boring, which is me. That's me. That would be my claim to fame. Not super excitable, not really high, not really low. And I'd say there's a bit of that as a learned behavior, I really have like take a lot of, I found that for myself, I do really well if I can anticipate the outcome. And I know that, hey, either good or bad, here's likely what the outcome would be. Mm-hmm. So I'm very, really surprised at the outcome. I'm very like, oh, I never saw that coming. Mm-hmm. Like that's usually not something I would say. Mm-hmm. But that's helped me developing that kind of vision and foresight has helped me in the moment stabilize and not freak out about, certain things. So that's kind of a long rant, but nonetheless.
I love it. Well, I think ideally our brain, our nervous system, our hormones in our body, we ideally adapt to undulating bouts of stress. So we know this very well from a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, a very old book written about 30 years ago. Author is Robert Sapolsky, and it's an insanely dense book. The bibliography alone is like 50 pages. So it was probably the smartest book I've ever read. He's a Stanford professor with like literally 4 PhDs. But the whole point can be summed up that chronic stress is bad, acute stress is good. Acute stress is so good, it's actually essential. And so the key part is we should get periodically excited, and then we need to really quickly learn how to go back the other way and kind of get bored to some degree. And so if you wax and wane between bouts of stress and to some degree boredom, you're gonna allow your tissue to recover, your brain recover, your nervous system recover. So as you were talking, me, I'm just like, sometimes I get addicted to reading, which is in itself actually a fault. But there's another book by a legendary Hungarian-American psychologist, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name. But he was the author.
There's no way to do that properly.
No way. 30 years ago, he wrote a book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. And the people use the word flow because of this singular researcher before this state. But before he wrote the book, I don't think they used flow in the same way. But he identified the flow state as a matching of your skill set with an appropriate challenge. So whether it is math, business, music, sports, anything that challenges you to an appropriate skill level, you will find yourself in a flow state. If you are over-challenged, you will find yourself in an anxious state. And if you're not challenged enough, then you're just bored. So right now, I'm thinking about my life as a clinician and my life as a business person, as a business leader. And as a clinician, sometimes I get a little bit bored because sometimes the problems are a little too easy. And it's like, I already know what to do. I already know what the next 6 weeks is for you. I'm kind of bored with this case. Mm-hmm. Now, if I get a difficult case, which we get periodically, then I kind of like it. It's like, I'm back in a flow state. But from a business standpoint, as the business has grown, I'm constantly challenging myself and my skill set. And so I'm constantly finding myself in a flow state. And then you might ask, well, how do you know you're in a flow state? Time passes neither fast nor slow. It passes in a way that you can't even comprehend. When you're involved in a project and 3 hours goes by like that, you're in a flow state.
And then we recognize we are in the flow state. It's very quite clear. Afterwards, when you talk, it feels like you just got hit by a hurricane. The information comes so fast. The rest of us are definitely out of the flow state. No, that's so true, though.
Yeah, I think it's great as you talk, because I think, from a stress standpoint, if ever we're inundated with an excessive amount of stress well past our skill set, we'll get into an anxious state. We'll see it in our stomach. We'll see it in our skin. We'll see it in our brain. We'll see it in our inability to sleep effectively when we are exceeding our own skill set. And likewise, if we're if we're not challenged enough, then we get bored, and then we start finding other ways of finding excitement, which is usually unhealthy.
Yeah, so that was exactly what led to that conversation. So we were talking about the fact that I'd given him a workout program like a year ago, and we didn't talk for quite a while during the meantime for no purposeful reason. But I gave him the workout program, and he kind of stayed with the same program for like a year, pretty much, right? Which is solid, but that in itself is not okay. So as any individual, you have to change your workout every like 8 weeks, right? The body has a normal cycling situation it goes through. So if the body can only do the same thing for like 6 to 12 weeks for the most part, and then change is good. Like you said, acute stress, make it different, because when it becomes chronic stress, it becomes negative. Even if it was positive at one point, it becomes chronic, now it's in the negative category. So I think the workout became that. Like, here's the same workout over this 12 months, this is too much. And in the same time, he started really working in the business with a similar type of strategy. So that like 6 months into that, he's kind of becoming this loaded chronic stress of every day is sensitive, because they're in a very sensitive, timely, service-based business where
deadlines.
Yeah, very, very tight, and you never really know what tomorrow brings, because he works as kind of the in-between spot in a role where he might get a call from a customer that needs him to do something, then he's got to call and work with another partner. So every day can be a little bit of chaos.
Reactive.
It's the same chaos, but you never know if you're going to get 5 of those calls in a day, or 20 of those calls in a day, or 1 of those calls in a day. So there's a little tricky, and the timeliness is very, very critical. So there's this kind of load on him constantly, and then we also have a very constant load physically with the workouts. And I think that that was what we talked about today. I said, that's the problem. You can't have that. You have to find a way to like have these short sprints. And I used some analogies. I found some great like experiences with doctors in doing interesting things. Like, because doctors are like this, very focused, very smart, very bright people, very, very determined to do their thing. And I found different patterns in like when they take vacations or like how they do things. Some people are very like 3 days off, 4 day off type of thing. Like, hey, I'm going to have a long weekend and I'm just going to shut it down on Wednesday and be gone for the rest of the week. And some folks will grind where they'll go for 3 months, then just like work like 12-hour days and just 16-hour days, just grind it out. And then after 3 months, they'll just be gone for a month. Just like, I'll take the month off, just shut it down completely, right? And that's how they recover. And you and I have talked about this many times. I've said this to you 1,000 times, is that you've always been a short-term kind of a week, like a 3-day weekend kind of a thing is great for you. And for me, like it doesn't work. Like I can't escape the work in front of me in 3 days. So I'm much more of a 7 to 10 day type of a guy, where if I get that, I can go really, really hard, and then I need a little longer break. Unfortunately, financially, we can't afford to take a month off, but that's, but it's great that 5, 6, 7 days, a week or so is amazing for me. And if I've realized that if I don't put those into my life, then I can't be at the tip of the spear during the other times. It does tend to burn. So
I think that's such an important realization that I think young people, your main job as a young person, like teens and 20-somethings, is to learn yourself.
Yes, that's the whole point of this. Just figure yourself out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I read a great quote. I hate quoting Instagram. I can't stand it, but I still catch myself doing it. And the quote was an Instagram quote of someone famous, which I forgot, which is a really lame way of saying the whole damn thing. But nonetheless, it said, life begins at 40. Up till then, it's just research. I thought that was a great line.
Yeah.
You're learning yourself. And once you learn yourself, now you learn the hand that you've been dealt. You have the best way of flexing it. You have the best way of understanding how you endure stress, what kind of sleep you need, what kind of activities that allow you to get into a flow state, which might be predicated on what activities your parents put you in when you were 8 years old.
Yeah.
But that's a big deal of understanding who you are and what makes you tick and allow you to be at your best. Because if we violate our own DNA, like I have a pro athlete that was trying his hardest to wake up at 4 a.m. and work out every day at like 5 a.m. Like, dude, that's not you. You like going to nightclubs and being part of his heavy metal band at midnight. So you're a wolf in every sense of the term. Your chronotype is just pegged for you to be alive in the nighttime. You will not wake up at 5 a.m. and do a workout. It's just not in the cards.
It's not who you are. Yeah.
It's not who you are.
It's okay.
Yeah. And then once he learned that, he tried to force himself, lasted like a few months. And he's like, I can't stand this. Like, yeah, because it's not your identity. It's not who you are.
Yeah. I want to come back to that idea in a second about the what activities you do and where you find your flow state. But was just to expand on this idea of like find out who you are. Like, who are you? How do you work? How does your body work? That was the point of my story there about stress response. And in working with this gentleman for the years that I have, I've gotten to know him quite a bit, and to say that he's very type A and likes to control things and likes everything to be kind of perfect. And now he's in a business where that's not the life. That's not the day. And I can see that bothers. That's tough for him, right? And so we talked about this idea that I used an analogy for him. I said, hey, look, if I trained Stephanie for the Olympics. I said, so when we went to a meet that was like at Stanford or, in Texas or whatever, it was a national meet. It was an important meet. When we go to that meet, we would have a plan. So we would train everything was a year. So everything is based on an annual calendar. And then we'd have, 6-8 weeks out of a certain big meet. There would obviously be a very focused training regimen in order to get this high level performance at the time of the meet, right? So that's basic science. We've talked about that in the past. But when it came to the actual meet, there'd be a travel day. So say she was flying from Sacramento to Houston, no problem. You leave on a Wednesday, maybe a Tuesday, you compete on Thursday, and then Saturday, we knew there was going to be 2 events. It's very low key. You can walk out onto the track surface and talk to whoever you want to. You can be out there for an hour. You can be out there for 6 hours. Nobody gives a damn. Doesn't matter. There's no security, whatever. So everybody knows who you are. You don't have to show your ID, kind of a deal, right? So it was very, very easy. So we had control of all the variables. So we'd say, hey, when you get there, when you get to Houston, when you get in on Thursday, I want you to get a 1-hour workout in. I want you to do exactly this. Find the gym at the hotel, whatever. We're going to do all these things, da-da-da. And even with that, I would say, hey, this would be an ideal workout, But if you're really, really exhausted, or if the gym you go to is shit and you don't have any equipment, then you do option B. But either way, you're going to get it in, right? And then, okay, next morning for breakfast, this is ideal options of what you should eat, but this is what's in then you have this menu to choose from. So if they're not serving that, you could pick something from this list. No problem. You still get what you need. You didn't fail, because if an athlete was to fail breakfast, then the next thing is they're going to fail the morning workout because they won't have been fueled for it. Then they're going to be delayed for the shoot around or the warm up before the event. And then they're going to be stressed going into the event, being like, well, I didn't get a chance to eat this morning, and then I didn't have a good workout, and now I feel like shit. And then the performance is shit, right? So you have to have this approach. So I was talking about so we had an approach for a regular meet, which is pretty straightforward. We control the variables. The Olympics is something different. So at the Olympics, you go 10 days early, if not more. You have to be careful. Some athletes go wrong by going too early. And then there's all the other events and festivities. This is why they don't go to opening ceremonies, because it throws off their whole routines. And then the practice facility, prior to your warm-up throws, is an hour away, bus ride. Maybe only 10 miles, but it's an hour bus ride because you're in the middle of a big city and there's all this traffic, right? So you're on a bus. So you go to the practice venue, you do some warming up, then you got to take an hour bus ride, and then you got to check in, go through security, which is at least a 30 to 40-minute process, even for the athletes. Go through all this stuff, check everything, and then they get you into a room. There's room A and then room B, and in room A, you're in there for 45 minutes. It's called the hipping tent. So they go in there and they get you your number and everything, and you just sit. And then you got a warm-up room, which is room B, which we don't really know what exactly it would look like, but it has turf and an open area where you can move and stuff, and then a bunch of chairs around the perimeter. So you're in there with a group of athletes, 30 to 50. But that 3 hours is very, very different than when we go to a meet at a place where we know everybody. Now obviously you don't have any rights. So I was telling him, I was like, hey, when we would do that, I would say, hey, we don't know what room A is going to hold. We don't know how much room you have. We don't know if you can do high knees and runs and sprints or straight-legged runs or what you could do or bounding. So if you can do that, that's what I want you to do. But if you can't do that, then I want you to do just ground-based. Let's just lay on your back, do knee to chest. Let's do some single-leg bridges. Let's do some pogos. Let's do some things that were within an in-place 5-foot circle. We know that we have that no matter where we're at, so we could work within it. So it's plan A, plan B, right? And then we go to the next room, and there's different requirements and different goals for us neurologically. So we would set those goals and set plan A, plan B, plan C, so that either she would always feel successful on the way to the ring.
You ramped up her skill set, her preparation skill set. So there wasn't a lot of curveballs that would make her anxious because she was ready to meet that challenge.
100%, right? So it was never surprised, right? Don't be surprised. Don't, oh shit, that happened. And then now I'm not ready and I feel unprepared. And then my head's down and now my competition levels. The last thing you want going to competition is to have your head down and not be ready. So the conversation was the same for him. This is the best example I can give you is yes, that's a one-day serious, but you need the same thing for you. If you waked up in the morning and you had planned to go to the gym at whatever it was, 7 a.m., I'm going to go to the gym, get my workout in and get after it. But hey, your phone rings at 7:05. You get a text, hey, I need you. A customer has this demand. You can't think, oh man, this ruined my day. Because it didn't.
No.
It didn't ruin your day. It's great. It's new business. You need to do your job. Execute the business. Plan B is you do your workout at 4 in the afternoon. Or you do a modified workout for 20 minutes at some other point, but you still were successful in your day. You didn't fail, and you don't need to get upset and frustrated and increase your stress level.
Right.
So that was a big take home, and that was very eye-opening for him to think about it like that. And I was like, that's how I live. So it was surprising to see that, but I think it was, hopefully that's helpful for some of you guys out there to be able to think in this regard where
the type A mindset has feels like their success is completely and utterly dependent on their programming and discipline. And if you relinquished a lot of that and relaxed and recognized a lot of ways of getting in the right body activation, the right movement, the right activity to promote great health and great performance, and you release that stronghold, that success equals discipline plus programming. Success does not equal that. It's very chaotic. It's a very chaotic recipe, and there's a lot of ways of feeding in that recipe. And I've seen repeatedly over and over again that success sometimes happens best when you have a curveball that threw your whole plan to snot.
Yeah.
And then it forced you to reset, focus on recovery, do less, and you're amazed, like, I can't believe I just lost 10 pounds. I can't believe I just hit that strength goal. I can't believe I did that competition. I did that well because I had all these things that completely altered my programming. Yeah. Release it. Release your thought that you have the perfect formula that defines success, because you don't.
That happens so often. As long as they have a strong foundation, that happens so often where all of a sudden they suddenly have to get a break and their performance goes up coming off the break.
That's the preparation part. I think when you hit the preparation, when you've developed a great base, whether it's aerobically or great movement or great skill acquisition, when you have a phenomenal base, it allows you to be really pliable when you're kind of conquering a peak. And
one of the strategies we talked about with him today to be able to feel confident and successful is instead of looking at your day like, hey, I didn't get my greatest workout in today, so my day's shot. Look at the month as a whole and say, okay, I'm going to have workout A is high intensity workout. It's perfect workout. It's ideal situation. And workout B is a good workout, but it's not quite A, but I can still get it in, right? I said, and then set some goals for the month to say like, hey, I want to get 10 A-level workouts in this month, and I'm going to get 10 B-level workouts in, and then I'll have 10 days off, you know? Mm-hmm. I said, and then look at those numbers and see if that's reasonable, because there'll be some days where you won't get distracted and type A works great. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the month, you should look back and be like, hey, I got my A-level workouts in this month, more than last month, or whatever the KPI is for you. And then I got so many B ones in. And then if at the end of the month you're like, all right, I didn't get enough of either in, well, then you start to like look back and learn from it, right? Mm-hmm. But you need to have those alternative plans, and don't get caught up in the day.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bigger fight than that. It's a much bigger war.
Yeah, and so often too, we're all guessing, whether you have a coach, whether you're doing your own programming or you look it up online. It's just a best guess of what we think success might come from, and be pliable, be adaptive, and our body's ability to adapt is partly predicated on chaos. And they've seen that over and over in research, that when you put chaos in any type of environment, the nervous system has an easier time. Now, there is such a phrase as practice makes perfect, or perfect practice makes perfect. And that is, the same idea as sharpening a sword, working on something, working on your craft over and over and over again. And you enhance your skill acquisition. You get better at set activity. It could be hitting a ball. It could be sprint technique, what have you, lifting technique. But enough chaos really promotes hormonal adaptation, neural adaptation, because frankly, that's how humans have evolved for the last 800,000 years. We're in a state of chaos, both seasonally, whether it's wartime, whether it's peaceful time, whether it's farming time. Our system loves chaos. That's the earth. Yep. That's nature. Nature is non-linear adaptive.
Yeah. So I think that if we look back at variables around this is what we're trying to do. And we talk about working with athletes or training an athlete. The concept is about putting them on a path that they can really achieve success at a certain time frame, like over a season or a certain game or a certain meet or whatever it might be. And one of the things that one of the variables here is readiness. So there's a lot of talk about readiness. And then HRV was a big topic that is thought to become maybe a predictor of readiness, or a measurement tool that we could use to say what's your HRV like and how does that show your readiness? Combined with sleep is a big factor, and then HRV levels, regular and heart rate variability was all big things as far as that goes. And that was for a singular event. So we look at this in a case like this one where we're kind of training for life, for this longer process. And you still want to be able to understand how you affect your readiness to go out and compete and be in an ideal state. And we know that the variables are going to be sleep, stress management are probably the top two for readiness. Mm-hmm. Nutrition plays a role there, and then your movement. If you don't have a nutrition and a movement base where that's been something you've built and that's something that's reliable and standard for you, then the other two are going to throw you off in a real hurry. But then it comes down to sleep and stress management.
And the readiness, for any listener out there, the readiness is both your success as a leader in your community, as a parent, as an athlete, as a mover. I mean, this is really success at every aspect of what we would call at the human level. And the HRV is the heart rate variability. Now, a lot of the Garmin watches, Apple watches, any type of wearable will spit out some type of readiness score that's almost always a derivative of HRV because there's literally 26 different formulas for this mathematical equation. But the variance of the heart rate can be seen if you just take any free app on your phone and you put your finger on the camera, and it kind of looks at the heart rate through your finger. And if you look at how your heart rate changes as you breathe in for 5 seconds and out for 5 seconds, you'll see that heart rate in the second change. So you could do it right now. You could put your finger on the light, do a heart rate app, and you'll see it'll go from 50 and it'll climb to 60 within 8 seconds. And then it'll crash back down to 50 in another 8 seconds. And that dance of variation is your heart rate variability. And you actually want that to be very high. So you want a heart rate that can drop very low as you exhale and then climbs a lot higher as you inhale. And the better the spread of those two marks is a higher HRV score, which is thought to be a good aspect to your vagal tone, otherwise called your parasympathetic tone, which really is giving you an idea of your relaxed state. How relaxed are you? And the more relaxed you are, the better you recover. The better you recover, the better you are the next time that you're stressed, whether it's soccer game or a board meeting.
Yep, 100%. So yeah, know that weighs on you. Let's talk more about that flow state again, and finding these things that kind of are important. So that was one thing that with this individual that he is chasing is like, at one point it was playing football, and at one point it was doing triathlon, and at one point it was golf. Those were things that were really comforting to him, and like he found as a stress reliever, which I would say was more of a shift the focus of attention, more so than a stress reliever, because those things also stressed him significantly. They were very, very stressful to train because anything he did, he wanted to do it at the elite level, right? So that makes it kind of a stressful thing.
Yeah.
Versus this idea of flow state and kind of find something you're comfortable with that you enjoy, that kind of helps you find that either relaxation or that space of comfort.
Yeah. I think from a flow state, what are the activities that you might find? I think you have to kind of look at your growing up ages, from right when you were born up to the time you left the nest, and what are the activities you were exposed in that you've gained some skill in, whether it's shooting hoops, hitting a soccer ball, hitting a tennis ball. And I think of all those activities, you acquired a certain skill. And if those are physical activities, we'd probably put them a little more in the movement and stress bucket. But say they were activities that weren't. They're reading a difficult novel, doing a math problem, playing some music. So there's plenty of others that are a little more on the recovery side of things. Even to be good at meditation, which I actually suck at. I fall asleep every time I try and meditate. But
maybe you're very good at it.
Yeah. That's right. That's what my professor said in college. But
everything's calm. Boom, Russ is out. Yes,
but I think it is something that as a parent of 3 little athletes myself, I think about that, of trying to make sure they don't just spend so much time playing one sport, because then they leave their childhood with a pretty narrow range of activity. Yep. Where if they are exposed to a lot of things, then they leave their childhood with hopefully 10 skill sets. And then later on in life, they can hopefully find a flow state in any of those or build off of them.
Yeah. No, I think it's super powerful, really, really cool. I mean, I've always gone back to that for myself, growing up playing basketball, for me, shooting was one of the things I could do in the game that I could actually contribute. And it's just something that's always stuck with me. And if I wanted to relax, if I had the ability to go out and just, find a hoop or go to a gym and shoot, that's extremely peaceful for me. Because I've done it so many thousand times that it's just I don't have to think. It's just very natural. And I've used it as a coping strategy for my entire life, right? When things got stressful or the game became hard, I would go shoot more because that was how I could contribute. Now I could get better. So it was kind of what I went to. So it's still that way in life, that if something's challenging me, I can go do that. And I find that to be very, very calming, very relaxing, and just feel like this is easy. And I can think about other things even. It's like a meditative state for me. But as basketball has changed, as I'm getting older, it's different to do. I can find that in other things as well. I found, in archery, for example, or in shooting, I find that to be very fun because it's very focused on a certain goal, and the both of them require quite a bit of self-awareness, controlling of your breath, controlling of your vision, controlling of all the other or understand the other points of the environment so that you can manipulate and adjust. And I like math and I like solving those types of problems. So for me, that's also like a relaxing type of environment. I don't know how I'd be in a competition with that, being that I haven't done it. But for myself, in a quiet space by myself in some open area, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's very important for all of us to find some degree of flow state, whether we are more of a coping strategy, like I'm very stressed at work, and I need to find an outlet. I think it'd be great. Or it's just trying to find fitness. I think if you find fitness within like a flow state of some skill that you have, playing tennis, going skiing on the mountains, I think it's just as important. And it is when we're finding fitness, I think if we're too hyper focused on an outcome, we can lose aspect of why we're doing this to begin with. And if we embrace the journey rather than the outcome, it's one way of letting go. Let go of failure. Let go of success. Let go of what you think an outcome might be, and just involve yourself in the process. And I think that's probably one of the best ways of finding any flow state. And when you do that, well, it gets really fun.
Well, you've used this to your advantage. I think that your story is really great over the last several months, where we've been really, really working hard in the business and obviously serving the clients and the customers. And you kind of made a commitment to yourself that you need to do something different to change your mindset a few months ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mean you're talking about martial arts?
Yes.
Yeah. So my injury happened, we all, as physical therapists, we all have like our big pivotal moment. And for a lot of people, it's musculoskeletal. And for me, it was neurological in my eye. I hit a post and lost vision in my eye. And when that happened, I immediately sucked at every ball sport at the age of 11. So it wasn't that I couldn't play. I still tried to play. I just wasn't that good. So you tend to play less of things when you're finding too much failure. And, we kind of need some failure and some success.
Yeah,
well, I really didn't have much.
Sucks when you're not good.
Yeah, I didn't have much success. So I went much more toward martial arts. And it dawned on me, I was talking with my good friend, Nick. It was New Year's Day. And he and I've always been obsessed with New Year's resolutions, because I think it's a fun reset. It's a fun, hey, let's take a clean look at my life and what's my next step moving forward to have some fun. And he was talking about returning back to wrestling and jiu-jitsu, because he recognizes that whenever he does it, it never feels like a workout. It always just feels more like flow. And as he said that, I haven't stepped foot into a martial art class in 20 years. And right when he said that, it was just like, oh, you numbskull. That's a skill set that you just haven't tapped back into. My parents invested a lot of energy into me to get good at that sport. And I hope I'm going to get back into this. So yeah, I've done Muay Thai once a week and jiu-jitsu once a week for the last 11 months. And it's been a great way of me losing myself for an hour and a half. I'm engaged. I'm active. I don't care about the outcome. I don't really even know what success would be. If what are you aiming for? I don't have an aim. That's the difference with my mindset, where maybe when I was younger, I wanted to win a tournament. I want to do all these things. Right now, I'm just I just love the journey, and that's what I'm after. And there's no stress for it. I'm not worried at all. And I think that's part of my mid-40s self, is I'm finding activity where I'm not obsessed about an outcome. Whereas there's a lot of other things in life, being a parent and a leader in a business. We're very focused on an outcome, and we are defining success with a certain measure. And let's go and hit this. It feels much more like a structured game in business and even in family life. It's there's a lot of things that the kids do and the family needs, but in this situation, I don't have an outcome. I just have a journey. It's very fun.
I think that's a really great point. I mean, there's so much in business coaching to this idea that there's what's the one thing, that we can do one thing, what's your one goal, and all the consultants we've worked with and people I've talked to grow personally, it really comes down to what's your why and those types of things. And what's your one thing? What's the one thing that we're here to do? And that sometimes that's a tough topic. How do you get down to one thing, right?
Yeah.
What we just said is an exact example of that, is that for us, our one thing is to give back to the world and the gifts that we have in our field and try to grow something that allows other clinicians to join this group and give back to people and make healthcare better, help people live a healthier life, live a happier life. And we have a skill set and a gift to be able to do that at a really high level. And so we're trying to create a platform that allows others to continue that journey and continue that process and to be able to scale what we've learned to more and more people. So it's super, super rewarding. So that's our one thing. And we both share that. When you have that as your one thing, I'm the same way. Like if I go out with basketball, like I don't go out and count like my shots. Like what's my shooting percentage? It would be horrible because then I'd all of a sudden shift my attention like, oh, I need to shoot 80%. Well, now I need to not do PT business. Now I'm going to go practice shooting 6 hours a day. Right. And all of a sudden I'll get really good at that, but this will not be so good. So I have totally the same mindset as I'm just going to go and just let it be what it is. And just, it's fine and it's cool. And I miss more than I used to, but not much more, but a little bit more than I used to. And it's like, man, it's still fun and still very relaxing and calming and everything else. But I think that's a really big point that if you have too many goals, and I think this is a challenge for everyone, but certainly there's a young person challenge where you, hey, I've really focused myself to be really good, and you felt it was individual, maybe it was at golf or at a sport or whatever it was. You worked your tail off to really master that skill set. And then, at some point that kind of comes to an end, either because you're no longer playing in college or you're no longer in the pros or whatever it might be, which they say is really, it's a really painful psychological moment for those athletes. But sometimes it comes because all of a sudden, like, you need money.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, like me playing basketball no longer like puts food on the table and I can't have a house and I can't have the things I need to have to get through life. So now I have to shift my attention towards that. And that's a huge shift where having both doesn't work. No. Like to be great at both doesn't work. Yep. You can be okay at two things, but all of the evidence and all of the conversations always comes down to like, choose your path towards excellence and what it is you want to be excellent at. And stick with that one thing and then still do your other stuff. Have fun with it. Use it in this state we're talking about. I think makes a ton of sense. But people struggle with that a lot with like, oh, I really want this work-life balance and I really want to have this, I really want these things in my life to be all perfect and I want work just to kind of be on the back burner. And it's like, well, that'll work until it doesn't. Yeah, right. But unfortunately, work takes a lot. You're a team of people around you are counting on you to do certain things. The people that you serve, your customers, or the product that you build, needs to be a certain quality so that those customers who use that product feel like it's effective and it's working and it's positive. And that takes a tremendous amount of focus. It doesn't have to be your only one thing, but it definitely takes a lot of focus. And if you're focused on that, and then you turn around and focus equal or more effort on something else, you're probably going to find a lot of challenge, not only internally, but long-term in how you function. Well, I also think like, most people that are successful in their 40s and 50s and 60s will probably tell a person younger, when I was in my 20s, I was crushing it. When I was in my 30s, I was crushing it. So it's kind of rare to have balance that tips too strong into the leisure mindset in your 20s and 30s and find great success that you can be more leisurely in your 50s and 60s. That's really hard. I think when you have the bandwidth to change the world, you change it. And if you can kind of hold on to that bandwidth for a while, then good for you. Yeah. But I think balancing it out with things that are more of a flow state is great for health. Of how much you're able to do just kind of depends on your goals. You have to be real with what your goals are and how much energy it's going to take to accomplish. Because, for me, having, 3 kids in sports, it's a lot of time that I say, you know what, kids, I'm going to put you first. I'm going to get you here. We're going to do this. This last weekend I had only 3 soccer games. Only. Yeah, that's 3. A low one for you. We have 3 kids. So that's all playing soccer. So you have to kind of make that choice of what you really want. Yeah, it comes down to that thing. I mean, there's these rules, right? The 10,000 hour rule, the 10-year rule. These are both rules that are like you have to do a certain activity for so long before you develop a mastery to it. That's the research is really, really strong in there. The book called The Talent Code and then another book called Talent is Overrated. Both those really marquee significant amount of literature and research around those concepts. And we see it all day long. Like the great examples are like Mozart with his ability to play and put together music and put together his playing of the piano. People thought he was amazing at such a young age, at 16 or 14 or something insane. But the reality is that his dad was a professor at what's that big college in England, that famous one that's really high end? Oxford. He was a music professor at Oxford. Like, so he taught the piano at a very, very high level. Mm-hmm. And so Mozart grew up with him. Like,
he was 3 years old playing.
Yeah, he was playing at 2, hours a day. And he loved it. And so by the time he was 12, 13, 14, he'd been doing it for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't like this overnight sensation, Same thing with Tiger Woods, right? He has, with his dad at birth, he was watching his dad hit balls into a net for hours a day, like in his little high chair, as the story goes. And he played forever. So by the time he had to be 16, 18, he had been doing it for 15 years, Right. So we see this over and over again, that this idea of dedicating to a specific thing. And even in the business world, we see it over and over again. Like Mark Cuban's famous for saying this. He's like, I did not take a vacation day, not a day off, for 7 straight years to build his business that he sold for the billions that got him where he's at today. And then when he says that to a group of other entrepreneurial people, they're like, oh yeah, same thing. Same. Yep. Same. They're all like, that's what it takes, Yep. And they just say it like, obviously.
Yeah.
So think about that. Like,
that's incredible.
If excellence or achievement that's your pursuit, then that's the kind of commitment it takes. So you can't be doing 2 or 3 things.
Right.
Now, in your younger years, our point here with this flow state, I think, is that if you are putting in those kinds of hours to be excellent at something, and then life changes where now you have to shift your hours to something else, that thing you go back to is going to be something you're going to be quite good at, and hopefully have a lot of enjoyment doing, and go back to it and find that comfort and find that space that you used to excel in. But then you're going to shift your attention to probably this newer thing, whether that is in your life.
Yeah, I think that variation of skill set, again, whether it's math and reading and 3 different types of sports, and fishing and brucking and hiking and getting out in the snow, when you can really change it up, of all survival skills versus sports, like, do it all. I love it all. And I think if you can really, spend a decade to just acquire various skills and then get to a moderate level, then what happens after 10, 15 years of doing that, say you're introduced to it at age 8, and all of a sudden by age 22, 23, you're, full-fledged, I guess adult can drink and vote and do all those amazing things that adults should do. Hopefully you have enough different skill sets that then you can lean into something that you think is enjoyable, point and shoot, spend a period of your life and have fun with it, and then go on to the next one. Because the reality is, as we get older, we get a little arthritic, and there's a reason why all the country clubs will speak to tennis and golf, because actually now it's pickleball and golf. But as you go those activities are a little bit less loading on your joints, whereas those people who spend their whole growing up playing rugby, there's not a lot of 60-year-olds still playing rugby, because that's pretty hard on the body. Yeah. So find skill sets that you can do, at least a handful that you can do well into your senior age, which is one of the main reasons why I learned the guitar. Because hey, I know when I'm a little more arthritic in my body and I can't handle martial arts anymore, well, I got the guitar.
I love that. That's a great one too. I've known Russ a long time, and you did not have that skill, right?
No, as a freshman, I got at the age of 30.
Yeah, he came in and he had met this young lady that he's now married to, and he's like, yeah, I think I'm going to teach myself how to play the guitar because she really likes music. And me and this other guy looked at each other like, this guy's crazy. Like, you're going to do what? This was like before YouTube, right? You can just pull it up and be like, just, He's like, no, I'll teach myself how to do it. We're like, what are you talking about?
In reality, I taught myself for about 3 months. She was like, you're abysmal and still suck. I'm going to buy you lessons. And so I took weekly lessons for 2 years. So that's kind of how that quick story went down.
She can teach you how to play the piano, but not the guitar.
Yeah, no.
But you still do it. I think that's awesome. And you find peace in it.
Yeah. I'm like, barely okay. I know chord progressions and I can play lead just off of a basic few.
No, I think we were talking about that's a big thing, I think, to be able to teach your, if you're a parent and exposing your kids to different things. We're talking about this idea of sport specificity. It could be a problem in the fact that hey, if they only do one sport or one thing, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
Because when that ends, that could be really damaging psychologically.
And it will end. When does it? Yeah. Most sports, the majority of sports, when does it not end?
Right, 100%. And then that's going to be devastating. It's like, this is all I've got. But if you can teach them other things and give them other skill sets along the way, I mean, I could say that certainly from my childhood, there were things that I was exposed to that gave me tremendous confidence, in my adult years. I mean, it doesn't have to be skills.
we traveled as a family. There was always a family vacation. So it was never like my parents went and left us. Like that never happened. So like wherever they went, I went with them. So we went out of the country, like going to Mexico at that time was big for them. And it wasn't like lavish stuff, but it was like little things and trips all the time. But I got to see a decent amount of places, and that gave me a perspective of the world and some different things that I knew, like what we had at home, and versus like going to another place in Mexico was like quite different at the time. So it wasn't like going to Cabo now, where it's like going to like, it looks like the U.S. They got a Ruth Chris and stuff. Like when we used to go, there was like, you eat the taco, stay on the corner, and that was it, And it was a very different way of life, and very cool to see and grow up with. And my dad would always fish, so I'd always fish with him. And now that's one of my flow state things now, is to be able to go do that wherever it is, Like, and we used to always like sport fish, and then now my wife has more interest in being in the mountains, which is a different kind of fishing. Mm-hmm. So I've adapted to that. I'm like, okay, I can manipulate this one skill I add and still enjoy it in that way. And it's now fly fishing has become more of the thing. Which they say, everybody asks me, like, do you like tie your own flies? Absolutely not. It's like, that's a part of the thing I'm not into. Like, I don't have time for it, for one, and I can't see for two. And I'd rather spend time standing in the river.
Than doing the whole like
than enjoying the environment and everything, and actually challenging myself with the sport rather than sitting there, like with with the glasses on the whole thing. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'll buy the fly for $1.50 and take my shots at it.
That's fun.
But I think it's a big thing. Hopefully this helps you guys looking at, remember the big picture, big four pillars of the way we approach life at Kime is that you have, managing your sleep, manage your nutrition, manage your movement, manage your recovery or your stress management. And I think thinking about those four things, and as we said before, if have one of those four categories is out of whack, that's fine. And that's to be expected. Very rarely does anyone have all four going at the same time. However, if you have more than two that are out of whack at the same time, our experience has been that that's most likely where you're going to have pain in your life, where you're going to have a pain or a limitation. That's when you're going to hit maybe a new low, especially physically. Like most of the patients we see that are in pain, especially if it's chronic, obviously not if you were like running and, got hit and fell down and you hurt your knee, but like if you just like all of a sudden have back pain or suddenly my shoulder's achy or my neck hurts or whatever it might be, sciatica, a lot of times they've got two out of those four buckets are not in line, and they've set themselves up over probably many, many years of this chronic stress or this chronic behavior of not great nutrition, not great sleep, chronic stress, and then not enough movement. One or two or three of those categories is out of line. And once you get to that number of two of them not being lined up, we see the odds of you having that injury is very, very high.
And I do find that the sleep one is oftentimes secondary. It's not, I'm not sleeping well, that means all these bad things happen. It's something's not doing well, and then eventually it affects your sleep.
Yeah.
That's common.
Well, yeah, I mean, if your stress goes up, it's hard to sleep, right? So then
you're not moving enough, it's also hard to sleep.
Yeah.
And if you're not eating the right stuff, it's also hard to sleep. So, and any of the other three definitely affects sleep. And it's once that's there, it's bad.
Yeah, and then because the sleep might be the biggest kicker. Like the research is pretty much unrelenting that if you're not getting enough sleep, you really can't recover.
Yeah.
So you're not recovering on a regular basis. This means that like if you're having stress or whatever happening to you and it's bringing down your performance, if you don't recover, well, then now you're just on a downhill slide.
Yeah.
You continue to move in a negative direction if you never recover. It's okay to get stressed, to our point. Like acute stress is great. Get stressed, have a drop in performance, then recover. And then you have what's called supercompensation, where you recover and you become better than you were before. So that new stress is no longer on the chart. It's no longer stressful. It's just a stimulus. And then you just respond and you react to it.
With that insight, I would even call the sleep as a lagging indicator. Kind of like a lagging indicator by like weeks, if not months, if not years. Whereas if you look at your urine output and your bowels, well, that's probably a 24-hour lagging indicator. Did you put the right food in? If you didn't put the right food in, you'll know in about 12 hours. If you didn't put the right water in, you'll know because nothing's happening in 30 to 45 minutes. and if you're not moving enough chronically for years, eventually your sleep becomes very poor and you don't know why. And you're trying to seek out, how do I sleep better? Like you have to address the movement problem, the nutrition problem, the stress problem. And after you've improved that for days, weeks, months on end, sleep follows.
100%. So if you learned something here, or if you have a story to tell on a similar line or something to contribute, feel free to shoot it in the comments, respond to us, reach out to us either through email at KIMEcast@KIMEperformance.com, or you can DM us. Either way is great. We'd love to engage with you, and we can bring your story to life here and talk about it if that makes some good sense. So thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you next time.